In today's headlines that shouldn't surprise you, WB Games is in disarray. After David Haddad, the head of the gaming division at Warner Bros., stepped down a couple months ago, it looks like the game division of Warner Bros. Discovery is looking for a refresh. But is it too late?
You are cooked!
Hey Internet, I'm Chris, and this is the place on the internet where I talk about comics, movies, games, and things I'm generally passionate about. Before we get into Warner Bros. Games dropping the ball on the DC license and just about every license they have, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. As a DC fan, one of the things you used to have over Marvel fans was the fact that animation and gaming was our bread and butter. There was no way any Marvel fan could step to us when it came to animation with movies like Batman Under the Red Hood, Justice League, Flashpoint Paradox, and then you had games like the Arkham franchise, which on its own really redefined the superhero genre and paved the way for things like the Spider-Man series, which Marvel is releasing now exclusively to Sony. But over the past few years, Warner Bros. Games has left a lot of meat on the bone when it comes to the DC license and just their gaming offering overall. Over the past few years, the only thing that they've really had that has been much of a success is Hogwarts Legacy, which when it released was the biggest game of that year. But 2 years later, they are still touting that success like, hey, it came out last year or 6 months ago. Since that time, they've released Multiverses, which led to a $100 million loss, and Suicide Kill the Justice League from Rocksteady, who, like I said earlier, redefined the superhero genre with the Arkham franchise, but somehow killed that entire franchise with just one game with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which led to a $200 million loss. We're also hearing that Wonder Woman is already $100 million deep into production, and they had a reboot early last year. So if you're a DC fan, I say buckle up, wait a little bit, because it's going to be a while until we get any good games. And if there is any more reason to dislike the Flash movie, here's another one. Jason Schreier also reported after the failure of the Flash movie, Warner Bros. Montreal was working on a Flash game that was canceled. So if you hated that movie, there's another reason to hate it. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is that Greg Miller, who I really admire, was at IGN, has his own company with Kind of Funny Games, was talking about the fact that he wanted to sit down with James Gunn about the state of DC games and that they should be making money hand over fist. It's a layup, really. And it's true.
We will do a lunch, and I will explain everything you're doing wrong with the video game division. Not you, but DC/Warner Brothers. We got to start future-proofing, because the days of Warner Brothers doing this stuff with video games is numbered. So we need to talk about what's going to be next and how we're going to fix this and how we're going to partner with great studios and great things. It doesn't need to be in-house. It doesn't need to be this. We're going to keep the executives out of there. We're going to stop making multi-bajillion dollar, $1 million games and make smaller experiences that get out quicker, like comic books, where people can get them and enjoy them and learn about new heroes, and they don't need to invest $70 into a bloated thing where they're just going to run around trying to be a superhero but not feel like a superhero. James, you and I need to grab the bag and stop it from being fumbled left and fucking right.
He is right when it comes to this. When you think about it, even for me, who's a Batman fan, people say that Batman's thrown down everyone's throat, that Warner Brothers and DC is always giving us more and more Batman, which is true in a lot of ways. But if you think about it, the last Batman-related project when it comes to DC games was Gotham Knights from Warner Brothers Montreal. They killed him in that game. Also, in Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, even though he was a clone, in the main version of the game, the Arkham Batman was killed. Now, again, it is later revealed that is a clone, but for the most part, no one played that later version of the season. I only found out about that because of the news and YouTubers and stuff like that. So to me, that franchise died with that game. Now, would I love to see Rocksteady go back to their core and make a single-player Batman game? Of course, and so would Warner Brothers. Schreier is also reporting that they are working on a single-player game, but if you think about it, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League took about 8 years to hit release after Rocksteady's last game, which was Arkham Knight. So if that is any indication of their pace in developing games, we won't see a Batman game anytime soon. Also, Warner Bros. Montreal pitched a Constantine game, which we'll never see, and was denied. So it's crazy to think, again, as a DC fan, where it used to be the thing we would be like, hey, like, the movies may suck sometimes, like, hey, like, I know you guys got the MCU and all that, but at least we got the games, you know? And in a lot of ways, that was enough, you know? Animation is why I'm a DC fan. I grew up on DC properties through animation. That's how I found the comics. Also through video games. Like, those Arkham games were transformative, and I think I revisit Arkham Knight every now and again, and I think a lot of people have, especially since there hasn't been a good game since then. And the fact that that game looks amazing, and it's crazy that even games that have come out since don't look as good as Arkham Knight. So it is crazy that game development's gotten to this point. Warner Brothers Discovery is in a hole when it comes to their gaming division. It is a surprise that they haven't sold that division, considering they've taken every opportunity to take everything as a tax write-off and rip the copper wire out of that company. It's crazy that Rocksteady survived the failure of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. A failure like that is like a Concord-like failure where you see the studio collapse. But being that you have a parent company and there's a lot of IP there that is actually worth something, unlike Concord, I guess it continues. And it is not the developer's fault. It is leadership. People like David Haddad, who is the head of that gaming division, it was no surprise, based on Jason Schreier's report, that he left, that he resigned. And which, honestly, in corporate speak, means he was fired. So for a long time, he was leading that division into the abyss, really doubling down on live services. Their one success over the last few years was actually a single-player experience. And I think they should probably take the approach of licensing games versus like keeping everything in-house. Because the reality is, game development now takes a very long time. I wish it didn't. It never used to take this long, but that is the reality we're in. And if you see what Marvel's done since Disney stopped publishing their own games, they've been able to license out properties to different studios, which led to Guardians of the Galaxy, Spider-Man 2 is going to lead to the Wolverine game, Blade. It also led to Avengers, but we won't talk about that. Hey, no one bats 1,000. Also led to Marvel Rivals, which is taking over the gaming industry right now. It's the biggest game in the world, probably making millions of dollars. And guess what? Disney and Marvel don't have to lift a finger. They just have to collect their licensing fees, which is what probably Warner Brothers Discovery should do when it comes to DC. Like, for example, if they felt in their mind that, hey, Constantine does not make much sense to invest a AAA budget and years of development, hey, why don't you license it to someone who would take that property and really value it? Because guess what? They're trying to make a name for themselves. This is their only opportunity to have a character associated with that kind of IP. And those are the games we used to kind of get when I was younger. There were a bunch of studios. I mean, mostly it was a lot of like movie tie-ins and stuff like that. But occasionally you'll get a studio that would take on something like that. And it sucks. And they've done nothing with these properties. Like I said, once great studios like WB Montreal and Rocksteady, WB Montreal, like, I like Arkham Origins. I love Arkham Origins. So I was really disappointed that they really fumbled a Court of Owls game. And because of those live service elements that they try to shoehorn in, and it wasn't polished enough. And I think that is like, there's a good game somewhere in there in Gotham Knights. Same thing with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. The CG elements there, like there's something there, and there's some cool gameplay elements. And it's crazy that we got a Speed Force Captain Boomerang before we got a Flash game. Thanks, Ezra Miller. So yeah, I'm in a place where I feel Warner Brothers should license these games out. And I haven't even talked about NetherRealm. They fumbled the last Mortal Kombat release, and they were on a cadence of releasing like a Mortal Kombat, then an Injustice game. We have no idea if they'll ever make an Injustice 3. Now, a lot of people have problems with Injustice because of its portrayal of Superman, and there is a little bit of like evil Superman fatigue. But that was a successful DC video game franchise, also a successful DC comic book. That, where is it? Like, where is Injustice 3? Like, it's insane that, again, layups. It's not hard. And it's crazy that it took $300 million of live service experiments for them to be like, you know what? We should probably make another Batman game. Yeah, let's make a Batman game. And Wonder Woman, it's really sad. A couple years ago, they unveiled this Wonder Woman game, which I was excited about. A lot of people were excited that, hey, we might see the return of the Nemesis system. Now we're hearing they had to have a creative reboot, get a new game director, and that Nemesis system that was going to be integrated into it, now they're doing more of a traditional action and adventure, which I'm excited to play Wonder Woman. But, Wonder Woman, if you think about it, is not in this new DCU that we know of. Like, she hasn't been cast. There's nothing really in the works in terms of a solo film. So you're like, oh, at least we'll get her in like the video games. Nope. I bet we see that Batman game before we see Wonder Woman. I put some real good money on that. So as a DC fan, this sucks. Like, there's been so many great like YouTube videos on like canceled Flash games or canceled DC games. And those, like, you watched them, nostalgic, but you always got something. There was always games that came out. Those games were getting canceled. Like, now it's like, dude, I have nothing. Like, there's nothing to play. I have to play Arkham Knight, like, over and over again. There's nothing out there. Like, it's insane that, like, DC Universe Online is probably going to live out, like, any live service offering that DC ever does again. To make a bigger point on this live service era, like, there's going to be a great book written how all these great studios, all their talent, all these resources, all this money was wasted. Like, we're going to have a whole console generation without a real Batman game. And that's sad. And what do you guys think? Do you think we'll ever see the great era of DC video games come back? I don't. Well, let me know in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe. Peace.